Well, folks, in today's video, we're going to be unboxing and attempting to fix up an old rusted out AHM locomotive I found on eBay. I found this locomotive along with 3 others a few months ago. I was just browsing around and it kind of caught my eye just because of how bad it was. The other 2 have a little bit of rust on them, but there's one in particular in this box which is just in horrible condition. I suspect it probably sank or was involved in a flood at some point. And I'm always up for a project, so I decided just to outbid everybody. I ended up winning the auction, and supposedly in this box sits that exact locomotive. So anyways, we're going to take it out. We'll see just how bad it is, and we'll try to fix it up. I don't think the poor condition is going to disappoint, that's for sure. Now, this locomotive did come with 2 others, so we'll have a quick look at those as well. I believe this is the one we're focused on. Here's the first one. I think it's an old Revell. Yes, it is. It's missing its drive shaft. Overall, it's, not in the greatest shape, but I've seen worse. And then we got a Pennsylvania switcher. This one is slightly worse, I think, but it overall doesn't look horrible. And then right here we have the main attraction of today's circus. Yep, that's about as it looked in the picture. It's so rusty it even stained the bubble wrap. This thing certainly caught my eye with just how rough it was. I mean, this is just terrible. As you can see, the whole thing is extremely corroded. Overall, an engine which I think has certainly seen better days, to say the least. So this was probably something being stored in somebody's collection and their basement likely flooded or something along those lines. I don't really know what happened to it, but it clearly needs a little bit of effort, but I don't think it's beyond the bin. We'll see if we can maybe turn this thing around. I've had a few rusted out engines which I've managed to fix up in the past. Not that it's the easiest thing to do. I give this thing like a 0.000 chance of actually starting, but I think we'll take these locomotives over to the track and just see if we can get anything whatsoever out of them. I bet these 2 are probably in somewhat working order. Maybe not so much for this one though. My only goal for today is to get that rusted out RS3 running, but just for kicks we'll try out the other 2 locomotives. Anyway, I'm giving this one 12 volts and so far I'm seeing just a little bit of current draw. Let's try wiggling it around a little bit here. It's really hard to see, but we do actually have a working headlight there. But I'm not hearing anything from the motor and the current draw is quite low, so there is some electrical connectivity inside this locomotive, enough to get the headlight going, but not enough for the motor, so it probably has rusted brushes, just judging by this. I don't know, that will be a repair for another day, I think. Next we have the F unit. I don't think this is the correct shell. It kind of looks more like an Athearn shell, and I also was not able to get it on the locomotive, so this probably had a different body at some point, but either way, we'll try to see if we can get it to start here. I'm giving it some power. And I got a nice bright shiny headlight. Not much from the motor though. Commutator on this one has definitely seen better days, so it's kind of obvious as to maybe why this one doesn't want to run. So there's another project for another day. And now for the one you've all been waiting for. I don't even think I'll be able to get this to sit on the track. I'm giving it some power. Well, what a surprise. There's absolutely no current draw. Well, that's certainly to be expected, so let's bring it over to the workbench and see if we can turn this piece of junk around. So this thing clearly is not too lively, really nothing too shocking there. That's exactly what I expected, but either way, we're going to try to open it up and see if we can make our way down to the motor here. I think we're going to run into a lot of seized components. Let's just see how bad it really is. Okay, so trying to open this thing up is clearly not getting us too far, so we're going to move on to plan B, which is super unorthodox, and I think a lot of people are probably not going to really like it, but it has got me out of this situation before. So for this next step, all we're going to need is a container and a delicacy which Canadians love putting on their French fries, also known as white vinegar. Now, this stuff is like 1% acid, which is strong enough to eat through rust, and I have some anecdotal evidence that it might be able to save save this locomotive, because a few years ago I was sent 3 Riassembling locomotives and they had clearly all been exposed to water. The 2 first motors I carefully tried to disassemble and I couldn't get the armatures out. They were too corroded and I actually ended up breaking them. So by the time I got to the 3rd, I was basically just ready to chuck it out when I got the idea, hey, why not try just soaking it in some vinegar and see if that works. I didn't expect it to, but a couple days later I checked in on the locomotive. It chewed away enough of the rust to actually get it unseized, and then I just cleaned out the vinegar, and that motor is still working to this day and powering one of my Riassembling GG1s. So what I'm thinking is that we soak this entire locomotive in vinegar, and if we're lucky, it will get this one running as well. Just for the record, I do not recommend doing this. I don't know if there are any long-term effects. I could see that the acid might affect the windings on the motor, so please don't try this. This is just something I'm going to try on a really clapped out old locomotive, and if it destroys it, it destroys it. But I figure, why not try? I don't think we can really make it any worse. With fall just around the corner, I think it's about time for locomotive pickling season. Alright, and tomorrow we'll come have a look at this thing. Either it will have been one of my best ideas to fix a locomotive, or as I expect, a disaster. I don't know. Let's find out. It's hard to see, but the acid is actually already starting to get to work on this locomotive. You can kind of see the little bubbles and lines as it starts to chew through some of the rest. So I'm really excited to see how this thing is going to look tomorrow morning. Up on the shelf with the other preserves it goes, and then tomorrow morning we'll come down here and we'll have a look and see how well the vinegar did. Well, here we are a while later. It's actually been about 3 days. I got a little bit more sidetracked over the weekend than I was expecting, but the good news is that it's actually given the vinegar a much better opportunity to work its magic, and from what I can tell, it's actually already done a pretty good job on this thing. I decided to remove the cap. I don't know if this needs air for the reaction or not, but I just figured, hey, why not? That's how I've done things in the past. So anyways, why don't we actually take this thing out of the container and see how it looks up close. So we're going to take it out of this and immediately put it in this solution, which is just water and baking soda. The acid's very good for removing rust, but ironically, if you don't neutralize it, it will actually bring the rust back even faster than just the bare metal. So we're gonna try to do this kind of quickly here. Look at that! Already almost a night and day difference. Now in the solution it goes for neutralizing the acid. It's now about 3 minutes later, and I'm not seeing any more fizzling, so we're going to remove the locomotive from the solution. We're going to have to work kind of quick to dry it off and disassemble it, because this is now all bare metal. But having said that, it's remarkable just how good a job the vinegar actually did. You can see it really chewed through all that rust, and you can tell by both the vinegar and the water just how much crap actually came off this locomotive. So now we'll bring it back over to the workbench, we'll disassemble it, and we'll try to see if we can revive this thing. Well, there's one screw which is already broken. Oh, it's not too bad. Contacts actually look good. That one's just fine. That's trouble. Let's try getting this one out for now. There we are. Oh man. And here we are inside the locomotive. Just about as bad as the outside. I mean, the vinegar probably did some work here, but there wasn't really anywhere for the rust to go, so we might have to re-soak some of these parts, but overall it looks okay. Now, the big question is, can we get the motor unseized? I mean, the thing looks absolutely horrible. Well, it's turning. What we really need to do is get that last screw out so we can fully disassemble this thing, and then try to go from there maybe. We might be able to remove it actually from the top. Here's what's left of the spring. Ooh, that's really bad. Yeah, this, this armature's toast. That is, yeah. It's all crap. Shoot! Well, the gearbox being plastic is actually not all that bad. So this is basically what I was afraid might happen, which is that this whole armature assembly has completely come apart. I don't know if this was just from soaking it in the vinegar or if the rust had already kind of screwed this whole thing up, but either way this thing is totally junk now, so I think the only hope of saving this locomotive is to go to my parts bin and just hope there's a spare motor in there. I don't think it's super likely, but you never know. That parts bin has got me out of quite a few jams in the past. I don't know if this thing is any good, but it is another AHM motor, so that might be a possibility. So these are definitely not the same. You can see that this one had its commutator on the top, whereas this armature has its commutator on the bottom, so unfortunately they are not at all a match. However, I do think we might be able to use this motor, provided it's in working condition. Yeah, because, you know, kind of is a similar size. I have to trim down the shaft of the motor, but that's not that difficult. I think we'll try to jerry-rig something in there. If this doesn't work, I think I'm going to give up on this locomotive, but let's give it one more chance. Well, that seems quite promising. Alright, so I did some work off camera. I just kind of carved this out a little bit more, so now it can actually fit this motor. I also trimmed off a little bit of unnecessary plastic, which I think is really just responsible for holding this bearing in place. It should be fine. The plan I have is just to sort of load this motor up right here. And then what we'll do is we'll run a wire up through both these sockets, which used to be responsible for the screws, and then with a little bit of universal motor mount, this might just work. Alright, let's see if we can get this thing locked in place with a little bit of universal motor mount. Alright, let's see if my handiwork here has paid off. Oh yeah. Okay, that seems good enough. I mean, if this does end up working as a full locomotive, it's certainly not going to be an excellent runner, but that's a terrific sign. I wasn't really sure if that was all going to work out. Just quickly threw some paint on this frame just to kind of protect it. I know it looks a little bit strange, but I find this silver paint dries ridiculously quickly, so that's kind of an advantage. I quickly tested this bulb. It seems to be working, so I guess we'll throw that back in there too. Yeah, I'm gonna be surprised if this is a good enough ground through this rusty connection, the paint, and then back up to the light, but hey, we'll wire it all up for fun. Now all we need to do is connect these two wires, and theoretically we'll have this engine back together. Gonna do a quick test run here before we go putting the shell on, just to make sure everything's in order. It's all so sketchy, I'm not so sure, but let's give it some power. And yeah, not so good. We seem to be quite shorted. So I'm pretty sure when I was carving out the space for the motor, I removed some necessary plastic, which is supposed to clip in here and here. And again, I had to do that for the motor, but now it's actually allowing these wheels to touch the frame. I'm kind of surprised power can still pass through the frame considering there's a layer of paint, but I guess it's just not thick enough. So I think in order to sort this out, what I need to do is just add a little bit of plastic here, just so that this is sitting on the frame higher than the wheels are. I think if we do that, it will fix this problem. This might be the most ratchet repair I've ever done on an HO scale locomotive. So, you know, it's not my greatest work, that's for sure, but we're not building Cadillacs here. Just trying to revive some junky old locomotive, and frankly, if I could see this thing ride the rails even one time, I'd be quite happy. 2 times the charm. Hey, look at that. Even the headlight's on. Let's try her for a lap. Well, not too shabby. She's gone around an entire lap. I am impressed. That is a lot better than I was expecting. So anyways, why don't we try to throw the shell back on this thing and see if we can get it to work like that. Well, this is it. The moment we see whether or not this thing actually runs or not. I mean, I know the frame ran on its own, but just because that works doesn't mean this will. Because when you add a shell, you know, it can mess with how everything gets arranged. So I'm really not sure. Anyways, let's give it some power here. Yeah, it works. Wow, look at her go. It's super quiet. That's certainly not something I would have expected. It's keeping up a good speed. The headlight's nice and bright. It's quite impressive. Even the current draw seems to be in check. This is really not the result I was expecting. I mean, I thought it was possible that maybe we would get this thing running again, but this is way smoother than I was expecting. You know, this is an engine we basically made out of busted parts and a junked motor. I think there's only one thing left to do, and that's to throw some cars behind it. I'm not going to put anything too special because I don't want to overtax that motor, but I think you can probably handle 5 cars pretty easily. I know the Vinegar didn't do a perfect job removing all the rust, but I think it's great, frankly. It's free weathering, you know? There are all these guys that spend all these hours putting all this detail on their locomotives just to make it look like there's real rust, and this one comes with it for free. Yeah, there it is. I think that's a little more like it. I love just watching the current draw kick down. Now let's see what kind of low speed this thing can do. Oh. So, yeah, I mean, the low speed performance isn't anything too terrific, but I mean, it's got a 3-pole, and that was a pretty junky motor, so the fact it's able to do that at all, it's actually kind of impressive. It's also only got 4-wheel pickups, so it's pretty consistent for what it has. Well, folks, that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed. I certainly enjoyed working on this thing. It was a bit of a challenge, and if I'm honest, at one point I was pretty sure it was never going to run again. But with some creativity and some spare parts and a little bit of luck, we managed to get it riding the rails again, hopefully for many more years. I'm frankly just amazed that it does run whatsoever, but here it is. Anyways, thanks for watching, everyone.